Yeah, so let's talk about President Joe Biden. This past week, he went to Oklahoma to give remarks regarding the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Massacre that happened in 1921. And, I read and listened to his speech that he offered on this anniversary. And I have to say, um, I agree with him that the event was one of the horrible events in our nation's young history. Right? It was an event uh, marred in injustice as a young man. His name was Dick Rowland, was facing possible lynching. All right. So what transpired was simply a demonstration of evil which runs through all of humanity. Like all of us got this thread of evil that runs through us, good and bad, right? We got it running through us. All of us have this capacity to do ridiculous, horrible, evil things. So, an entire town with families and industries, Black Wall Street, it was decimated by other American citizens. Okay. Was it surprising for that time? No, it was not. So I agree with you, President Joe Biden. Again, as you stated, we should learn from our past because that is what quote unquote great nations do. So this is what you said, and I quote, "We do ourselves no favors by pretending none of this ever happened or doesn't impact us today." Because it does still impact us today. We can't just choose to learn what we want to know and not what we should know. We should know the good, the bad, everything. That's what great nations do. They come to terms with their dark side, and we're a great nation. The only way to build a common ground is to truly repair and to rebuild, close quote. So first, let me again agree with President Joe Biden. Yes, we are a great nation. Even since 1921, we've prospered with each other. We sinned against each other. We've learned, we've forgiven, we've grown. So yes, we are a great nation. I hope this is a repudiation of those who claim our nation is just simply morally bankrupt on the account of racism, more specifically systemic racism. All of America needs to just be completely undone. Hey, but at the same time, again, your speech was sorely lacking. So second, you yourself have demonstrated consistently a lack of gravity and sincerity towards American Blacks, questioning even the very Black identity of those who would not vote for you. Yeah, you said those things on Charlemagne the God's show, Breakfast Club, when you was running for office. So you're right. We can't just choose to learn what we want to know and not what we should know, close quote. So I mentioned this I just say this, right? But when will your party, all right, lay out the injustices it historically committed against American Blacks with its legislation? Since you are the leader of the Democratic Party, President Joe Biden, when can we expect that speech, which lays out the long train of abuses committed by your party against American Blacks? You mentioned the Ku Klux Klan. So to what party did these KKK members belong? As you stated, quote, they were proud of it. And that hate became embedded systematically in our laws and our culture. Close quote. What was the legislation passed in 1921 in forward, which hampered housing, supported redlining, priced out American Blacks from potential employment? All right. What party led those charges, sir? What party did the Ku Klux Klan members primarily belong to? You're talking about there's things we need to know, right? we need to come to terms with. All right. So your party is pretty vocal about how Republicans treat American blacks. And honestly, your party's hands, they're just not clean. They're just not. So lastly, your speech offered the same promises regarding childcare, entrepreneurship, and housing. It's the same political stump speech, sir. Equally, what hasn't changed is this insistence that the federal government will be the savior of American blacks. I don't ever hear this mentioned about Latinos. Don't ever hear this mentioned about Asians. Don't ever hear this mentioned about Native Americans. Just us. So it was the federal government and state governments and local governments, Mr. President, with the systematic legislations which have contributed to many of the problems. You clearly admitted this in your earlier in your message. I don't speak for American blacks, but I can say this about these Americans. These men and women are creative, resilient, we're influential, and continue to triumph in this great nation. Opportunity, absent federal or state paternalism, is the key. And if you could just lead the way this way, sir, just by getting government out of the way, I would be the first to applaud your leadership in this regard. So Tulsa is a lesson most certainly about the ugliness of humanity, but I agree with you towards the end of your speech because you mentioned hope. Hope is also running through humanity as well. I hope, as you do, for the realization of justice in the lives of people, that you would maintain hope. Just hope. You don't need to have people come and try to, or you don't need to have the government come and try to save black people, American blacks. If we would just get out the way, have an environment in which there's greater freedom, we're going to the people and not towards the federal government, which you lead, and you would encourage governors to relax their state restrictions, and those governors would encourage county judges and mayors to relax their restrictions. Not only would this benefit American blacks, but it would benefit all Americans because association would increase. The opportunity for people to exchange ideas and goods would increase. People could start businesses faster, right? People could build houses where they want to and how they want them to look. Just all of these different types of things are possible if you would just get out the way, sir. So, I mean, it's something that we keep hearing the same thing, and it's primarily directed towards American blacks. I have hope. There are other American blacks out there who have great hope. So my reaction to your speech, Mr. President, is have hope. And the way that you can demonstrate that hope is real is by getting the federal government out the way. Hey, if you found something of value, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Find us on Facebook at Dr. Philip Fletcher. Find us on Twitter at Philip Fletcher. And as always, visit us on the website philipfletcher.com.